big star.
Good morning, everyone, and good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Doesn't matter where you are. You're in O-Friend community territory. This space call is specifically for the O-Friends, not saying that you can't listen if you don't have one. You can listen if you want one. You can even listen if you don't want one, but that's unlikely. We'll talk about what O-Friends are, the deep, deep history in this call, as well as the upcoming narrative behind what we're doing next with these guys and management and everything else. We've also got Craig here with us today. Craig, you want to give a shout out real quick?
Hey everybody! I think that it's only appropriate that after seeing so many of these handsome O friends on so many people's profile pictures, that we do a space call dedicated to them. So really excited to dive into this stuff, and mostly excited that Keith is here at not 3 a.m. his time. So we're glad to be doing something on a different time zone. I know we normally have things on the evening side of the PM on Eastern time, but we're rotating it up a bit. We've promised we were going to do so. So excited to have maybe some new faces here that don't get to normally join us for the calls. So really excited to get into it.
Okay, everyone. So today's call is both casual and professional. It's forecasting or future forward, but it's also retroactive in a reflection of what each O-Friend actually represents. The entire space is at a critical moment that we've seen many times before, and it's at this moment that the biggest opportunities are here to both craft the culture and take a winning or a first place position in the space. So in today's space call, we'll be covering three main categories. The first categories will actually be breaking down the O-Friend design thesis, and we'll go into the intricate details of every one of the design elements selected for the O-Friend class of products. And then we're going to weave those details into the narrative. Now, we are not going to tell you the full story, because what's the point of being in a story that you're already living? Like, we're going to live this story. But it's important that you understand the intricacies so you see the thesis behind this, because every one of these items, every one of these images is packed with a narrative density, a gravity behind it that we have to understand as a community. The second major thing we'll be talking about today is the O-Friend DAO and the real world creation of a DAO in Wyoming built for the O-Friends that has the actual ability to cross bridge assets into the real world. So if, for example, you wanted to uh, tokenize the sound of an annoying siren, you could. But you could tokenize anything. And the way that you tokenize is through a policy framework that's been established. We'll go into a little bit of the lore there, which we as a team have tokenized or have built frameworks to tokenize assets $50 million plus. This particular is not a tokenization of that event, but you'll see. And then the final thing we'll be talking about is the evolution of the lore itself. So something called the feast. And that is the next stage for the O-Friends and what we'll be doing with them to really start expanding the O-Friend community right after the auctions stage 2. So yeah, Craig, do you want to kick us off with the original premise behind the O-Friends, why we chose a dog.
Absolutely. So I think everybody is sort of. I mean, I'm assuming that if you're on the space call, you're here on Twitter. You're internet native, and I think many of you know the Shiba Inus from memes and Dogecoin and all of the above. I think that while we wanted to, we had a dual purpose in picking the Akita Inu, which is sort of a larger cousin to the Shiba Inu. We wanted to obviously. I think dogs spoke to us, as I think a lot of projects that have dogs. I mean, might say. Man's best friend, I think, was always like something that we wanted to put into our PFPs just because we wanted to give something that represented not only something that was sort of universally understood as a partner, as a friend, as someone that could help, but something that was inherently seen as useful, friendly, an appealing face. And I think that we went with the Inu breed of dog just because of its relative, its understanding amongst internet culture as having quite the personality. I think that's why you see all those memes and gifs and YouTube videos of the dogs, whether it's balancing things in their nose or getting upset at a piece of broccoli. I think that there's so much internet history and culture packed into the Inu breed. And we thought the Akita Inus were something that didn't get a lot of love. So it was a blend of saying we want something that's mass appealing. Everyone's going to understand that these dogs are here to be friendly, here to build, and here to be your best friend.
And if you think about it, the definition of art has a heavy weight towards relatability. And the relatability of something is most impactful when it crosses the mortality barrier. This 80-year cycle where the average human being ends up either passing on their memories to the next generation or not passing them on, depending on how evolved we were as a species at that time. And from the dawn of time, from caveman pictures forward, the definition of exploration was complemented with a dog. So you see this root in dogs are a complement or a security, a patrol, a backup when you're truly out in the unknown, establishing new windows. And obviously, like Craig said, we had this, there's a memeability to it, but we never want to take the road most traveled. And so the Akita allows us to adapt that narrative with people who are really interested in what's going on here. And that's why we want this conversation to ultimately help you have conversations with your friends, with others, with the fight that is happening in crypto that you can't see. And the biggest changes in society are the ones that are made without anyone seeing. That's when history itself truly changes, is when there's this invisible power happening. And in the crypto space, we are at an apex moment for the entire industry. And the world is not paying attention to that. They're looking at prices or they're looking at FTX or whatever the drama is. But they're missing what's actually happening, a true question of empowerment. So if we look at the selection of the creature, that's one perspective. But if we break down the actual image, I want to kind of walk you guys through the elements of it. If we select any one of your O friends on the stage today, Gregory, I see yours obviously standing out. O Chad, nice. Crash Overfried, I love your new one. Very nice PFP. But actually, if you guys see Boss, she or Krista Platts, the let's see, co-owner and CEO of @716 Mafia. She's got an awesome profile for us to talk about because she actually has two O friends in her profile. One is the banner, and one is the actual PFP. And so let's divide these dogs up, and I'll try to use your guys' dogs as we talk about the examples, just so you see what's happening here. Each dog is a snapshot in crypto history. So it begins with, in the upper right hand side, a script, a kind of statement, and that script is unique to the dog itself. It's also a failsafe for the entire crypto space. So the most powerful or influential corpus of crypto information ever created was poured into something called the Cyphernomicon. Your O friend has a piece of the Cyphernomicon hidden, engraved in the actual image itself. So even if people tried to censor the Cyphernomicon as metadata, which you'll notice if you go to your O friend and you look at him on OpenSea, this information is in the metadata itself, but you'll have to actually know, like you know now as an O-Friend owner, that the rest of the crypt, the full thing, is also woven into the actual pixels of the image. And I like Boss's dog here because even the color kind of hides this little font that is so precious to the thesis of the crypto industry. And the Cyphernomicon birthed the thought and reasoning behind the cypherpunks, which is where Bitcoin was released and fostered and grown, challenged. It is the sandbox that created Bitcoin. So when we look at the power of the Cyphernomicon, if you were to try to stop Bitcoin, you have to kill the Cyphernomicon from ever existing. And so what you hold in your hands is a very small, subtle way to act as an archive to protect that asset. If you look at her dog, I'm assuming you're her. Krista Platts is the username, but I'm sorry if you're not. You're also a boss. We'll call you the boss dog. If you look at the boss dog, the upper left-hand side also has a human face. And we're still surprised. There are a lot of O-Friend owners who love the design, they love the art, they love the premise of a dog, but they don't really know what this face is in the upper left-hand side. A couple of weeks ago or days ago, it all kind of blurs together, but I posted a tweet of some of the reasons that Hal Finney is important in the industry. And I posted some evidence that so a lot of the world hasn't seen either, related to the influence of Hal Finney. And Hal Finney is either the creator of Bitcoin or the second user of Bitcoin. But Hal Finney is the first individual to send a transaction back and forth between him and Satoshi. Hal Finney, in my opinion, is Satoshi, but that it's one of those things that I hope actually never gets answered. The power of the crypto industry is in the fact that it has no master, because you personally should have no master. That's part of the premise behind it. So we emblazoned his face before for his passing in the upper left-hand side of the image. Now, you'll actually notice that more in this conversation, we've changed it several times to also increase the lore of the imagery. There are multiple types of O-Friends, classes, etc. But that face is Hal Finney, and he's emblazoned on every O-Friend out there. We did reach out to his legacy on this just to let her know and ask if if this was inappropriate. We didn't ask for any licensing because we're not trying to make money off his name, nor do we mention it. We just simply emblazon a face to acknowledge the history. Craig, you want to say something?
Uh, yeah. I think what's important here is uh, too often you in NFT projects or token projects or meme coins or whatever, when you find yourself in the crypto space, it's so easy to have blinders on and see only what's in front of you, to see only the promise of technology, the hey, this is the latest greatest thing. Oh, this is something that's new and interesting and faster and better and stronger. And I think those are all really important. But I think equally important and often lost is the generations behind us that sort of shaped how we arrived at those things in the first place. So I mean, the Cyphernomicon wasn't written in 2021 or over the COVID break. The Cyphernomicon was released in '94. There are people who were born after that. I was 5 years old when the Cyphernomicon was released. Hal Finney was died in 2014, almost 10 years ago. Like these are important pieces of the personal privacy, the personal independence and financial independence and personal freedoms, the narratives around that and the narratives around creating something that goes beyond borders and governments and uh, any boundaries that man creates. Those ideals were shaped by a group of humans and a group of people, and I think it's important for us to take a look at who those people were and at the very least respect them and have them emblazoned into the actual PFPs themselves. So whether or not anybody realizes it, by owning an O friend, that's what you're doing. You're tipping your cap to the previous generations while acknowledging that NFTs as a technology themselves are forward looking. You have the seminal privacy and cryptography work emblazoned into your NFT. You have the man who at the very least, was the first recipient of Bitcoin emblazoned into the top left of your PFP. I mean, these are not accidents, and these are not something that we take lightly. So we encourage. It's not necessary. It's not like the Hal Finney's name isn't on the NFT itself, but it's not necessary to know who they were as being an O friend owner. But we think it's important that you do it. So uh, the more you engage with the stuff that's in the NFT, I think you'll find that your personal knowledge and your personal use of understanding where we came from and where we're going, that'll get expanded dramatically.
It's just so cool even looking at these because sometimes you see the details and then you see the possible futures that come from that. The possible futures is an important thing because people look at family trees, which is what we're looking at now. What you're looking at is an intellectual family tree, right? You're looking at how one idea led to another. We don't know what the family tree is going forward from the O Friends, in that the ideas that you guys will create, we will all create, um, are born from, and they stand on the shoulders of these giants. But I do want to go briefly into the O Friend history, just so that we understand the premise of these creatures. They are a class of animal that evolved from two different houses. So there is House Unicorn and House Dragon. These are magical theses. So we understand that, hey, we're telling a magical story. This isn't real. And as I mentioned at the start of this call, well, we have this O Friend DAO that's very real, that's now incorporated in Wyoming, which took a little more time than we thought, but now incorporated and ready to go. And we have this magic that drives it. And then I'd also point to things like Disney and Pixar, where the unreal is the beginning of everything real. So, well, we see these backgrounds as, yes, they are an imagined world. We can draw the backgrounds from the sources of things that created great things in the past. So things like the Greek tragedies are powerful narratives that have transformed human development for thousands of years. That is why we created a what's called a dipolar structural narrative, which is that there are two birthed sources of energy behind an O friend. So your O friend either came from a class of dragons or a class of unicorns. That's where the bloodline came from. He stays and lives here in this land as one of those two things, as the creature evolved to adopt the ways of this world and become a wolf. So you'll notice in the collection, there are these skills that ultimately your O friend will be able to remember. And so he'll be able to remember the powers that he had if he was a unicorn in the past. And then, of course, there are actual among us remnants of that genetic timeline in the form of real dragons and real unicorns. And the reason they stayed so pure is tied to the mathematics. So the mathematical side of the O Friends is immense, both in the contract side and on the token level. The O Friend itself as a contract is an ordinal style contract, with some efficiencies that allow us to do some amazing superpower stuff with the OFriend smart contract that just isn't possible in a decentralized way without doing it. So, for those of you who don't know, the token number of your OFriend translates to many different things about his identity, what he does, his powers, his lick power. His token number has capabilities built into it. If the genetic line of a DNA strand, if we think about it, has a very consistent thread, then we know that it can be a certain thing. So, for example, whenever you see a combination of 777, it's going to have the power of a pure genetic unicorn. And so we've used the token IDs to create real DNA threads of the OFriends. Now, you can imagine a DNA thread leads to future DNA threads. So, for the savvy of you, I know that I'm seeing a number of you who are who I already know have talked about this, or seen this before, or even asked about it. There are all sorts of suggestions of a future for the OFriends in their DNA. And so mixing DNA, especially with the powers that are in these unique token numbers, is going to create really unique new animals that'll follow some of those theses.
I, I want to drill in quickly on the ordinals thing, because I think that we've seen a lot of folks, a lot of folks in our community adopt and adapt to the ordinal. You'll call them NFTs, I guess, Bitcoin NFTs. But I think what's important to to note is that the way that our contract, the way that the OFriends contract relates to ordinals, isn't necessarily that it's on Bitcoin. Obviously, it's on Ethereum, but that to Patrick's point, that the numbers matter. That you'll see the Bitcoin. Anyone that has a Bitcoin ordinal has a Bitcoin inscription number, and they are in order, and that order is universal and will not change. And I think that is that mechanism of ordering these particular NFTs is what we have used to not only grow the NFTs
Your
from.
mic is leaving us a little bit, Craig. Can you get a little close to it?
Oh, son of a gun! Son of a gun! Sorry,
There
guys.
we go.
I'll see if I can. All right, there we go. That's much better. I think I had my hand over the mic. That's always a good thing to do on a Twitter Spaces call. Um, but so the idea behind the using the numbers themselves to actually mean something, that's why when you had an OFriend unopened house and you burned it, or not burned it but like opened the OFriend house, it didn't go from, you didn't get a brand new random number. You actually just added 10,000 to the number of your individual OFriend house itself. And it was important. The only way we could do that was by respecting the order in which each individual OFriend was minted. And that order was really, really important. So, to Patrick's point, there's a lot of things that we can do. The DNA of the OFriend built into the number itself and the order in which it was implemented. But I want to remind you that this wasn't something that we took inspiration from the Bitcoin ordinals. We launched this project in, I think, we launched the OFriends in November 2022, I think. So this has been around for a while. And I think that it's exciting to see other people use it and in Bitcoin. And I think there's like Doge ordinals coming out as well. But it's something that this technology is something that we've seen a use for a while, and it's been in the contract well before ordinals came out.
So if you look like it's okay, well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the value of an OFriend? Are we talking about the density of the OFriend? What we are passing to you is the narrative firepower of this, and what it lets you do is open up conversations about the power of creativity, both to monetize it, but also to explore it and push its limits. So I want to go briefly into the next stage of the OFriend itself, which is the upper bar of your OFriend. And we again are going too slow. It's already 30 minutes in. We're only 30 minutes in, and we're only the first 100 pixels on your OFriend. over to the right. But we're gonna speed this up slightly so that we get there a little farther. So if you open up anyone's picture, and I'm back to Boss's dog here, you can see that at the top there is a ID tag followed by a name and then a power bar. And the ID tag is a way for individuals who are new to the project to see exactly which OFriend that is. So it has the actual token number emblazoned in the image without damaging the artistic capability of the image. If we zoom all the way out at the entire frame, now that we're in the center of it, you can see this frame is very intricate. This was a frame hand designed by a concept art designer in Los Angeles, a 3-week process, not including our back and forth with him, who actually did a number of the New Hope posters. Notably, he worked for LucasArts for a period of time as a designer, and something called Chrome Hearts, which seems to make people who understand fashion excited, but I don't know that. But it is something notable in the fashion space. He created this frame with the thesis to build a frame so appealing and so powerful that it carried the same weight as the frame of a dollar bill. So we are playing a game of money. That is the game. That's the trick. The world, the life you live in, that is life. That is real. The game that the governments have given you to run, this wheel chase, the chase for cheese, is the frame. It's the context that we live in, but it isn't the source and it isn't the root of the story. So this frame is designed to appear as a dollar bill or as a deed in extensive order. It also has, in the very tiniest parts, and this is the only time I'm ever going to mention this because it is a bit of a Easter egg, but it has, for those of you who find it, a very small owl. And the owl ties back to the lore of centralized leadership in the Republic of the United States. So there's something called the Bohemian Grove. It's an event that used to carry great influence in the political circles in the United States. In that grove is the hallowed owl. It's hard to say because they would do this joke well under some sort of narcotic or under heavy alcohol influence. To be able to say hallowed owl meant that you were not far enough along in the celebration or shrine. So it's a little spooky of a context, but it's a reference to it. And on every dollar bill in the United States, so also is hidden the same owl. So this owl is inscribed on the frame of the OFriend card in an homage to that, but also as an acknowledgement of the sources of power. What bothers me about revolutions in the past is they do not respect their elders. They use disrespect to destroy the foundations of the revolution. That's a mistake. You always acknowledge the roots of power and build upon it. You don't need to burn it to change things. So let's go back to the actual design thesis. This frame is a frame around your entity. So it lets us design around the animal itself, but it also lets us create a class of products. So you guys will love when the product has reached its mature form, which your OFriend has reached its mature form through one process, which is the opening of his house. You have this finished frame, and the frame then becomes your account management interface. So, which brings me to the next thing. Craig, do you want to talk about that giant number on the left-hand side, what it does, and how the OFriend's got it?
Yep, absolutely. So I think most of you, I mean, I see so many familiar faces here. I got a feeling that this is not most people's first space call.
I
But
think most people are
if it
Googling
is,
Bohemian Grove right now. They're probably not listening. Just
right,
what the hell? There's a conspiracy. We're not Bohemian Grove
right.
people, by the way. That we're acknowledging it and revealing it, not supporting it.
But but isn't that what someone who was a Bohemian Groove
Oh
person would
God, no.
say? No, I'm obviously kidding. I think that To what Patrick said earlier, I think is really important. Like it used to have a very important role, and now obviously doesn't. And there's a lot of pros and cons that came out of it. But I think the important part was that there's a binding thesis around creating financial instruments that I think was really important that we added in. And I think you'll see if you have a dollar bill in your pocket, pull it out, look in the upper right hand corner on the one, you'll see you'll see that little owl. Um, so the numbers itself on the top left. So I'm going to use somebody else's. I'm going to use somebody else's a friend. I'm going to use Crashes because he's got that fancy new Ray Beam
I do love the combination of the
cyborg.
suit with the cyborg.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a solid, good
it's
choice in the TFTs. Well played.
super cool. The reason why that number is important. So just below, for those of you following along that maybe have a no friend or want to go look at it, or looking at a picture of no friend, beneath the picture of Hal Finney's face is a number. And I think that the reason why I was mentioning, for those of you who haven't, maybe this is your first space call, I don't think it's many of you, but for there might be some of you. The OLAND is something that occurs. One of the most important things that when OLAND was sort of born, one of the most important things that we talked about was how boring other metaverse platforms were because they were sort of flat.
Zing, zing,
Um,
blang.
Look. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to crap on other projects. Admittedly, it's not a good thing. Just calling them boring for no reason. But I understand it. I guess what I'm saying is, like, when we were sort of talking about, like, what are things that we could improve about. You look at a sandbox. You look at a Decentraland. You look at other metaverses that have been attempted. Two dimensions, I think, became sort of a problem. Like you could go left, right, forward, back, and that's pretty much it. And there wasn't any indication aside from, like, maybe how many buildings you built on your on that particular plot of land, or maybe how many people visited. But, like, if I'm on one plot and then, like, 10 plots over, something important, like the most important, the most valuable, the most interesting thing ever was happening, I wouldn't know because I'm 10 plots over and I can't see. Um, and so I think that's where the concept of height really started to come into play in how we were talking about what an ideal metaverse would look like. And that evolved into what I think you guys, the folks that are familiar, will know is the concept of land combinations and increasing the height of your land. So everyone starts out at the same level, but what you can do in OLAND is combine a certain number of OLAND plots and choose a base land, so where the height is going to all go, and merge those lands into a certain level that will essentially burn all the other lands and raise the height of your land to that plot. So let's get back to Crash. If you guys want to look at Crash's cool NFT as well, his is 32. So in OLAND, that means that someone will have had to own 32 plots of OLAND, and they will have had to combine those OLAND plots, which is essentially burning 31 OLAND plots, in order to get to level 32. So that sounds really, that sounds cool. Obviously, the height, and I think one of the key things that we're really excited about in the coming down the roadmap is the AR application, where you actually be able to see that it's at a certain height. You'll be able to look through your phone and see the different heights of where other OLAN plots are. But the depth behind how it got to that height is really important, because the merging and the combinations, uh, it's possible to fail. I think that's something that's really, really interesting. And it's that when you combine the process of attempting to combine plots of land, it's possible that that it does not merge effectively and all other lands are burned except your baseline.
So there's
So
there's a tie-in perfectly for the power bar, Craig, because then
nice.
that I mean I'm teeing up the power bar.
Nice. No, it's really, really interesting because I think that when you have there's if you have somebody that has getting back to like the sort of straightforward metaverse example, if you're in the metaverse and you look and you see someone has like a building, like okay, they probably bought the building or maybe had somebody design it and then put it in and then they placed it on their land. Great. It's all very, very straightforward. It means that they were able to purchase something and they built it, and it was all a very, very easy, straightforward thing. So much so that it doesn't actually become a thought. It's like, oh, that's just a building that gets built, or that's a bench that is there. But having height represent a form of danger and a form of trials that individuals would need to go through in order for it to even work all of a sudden puts so much more weight when you look through your phone and you see that someone in your neighborhood has a 64, 128, or even a 4 or an 8 plot. You think, wow, that person was willing to risk the burn in order to get to that height. And I think that's what's interesting about the height and levels in OLAND and for the O friends themselves. Um, that number for the O friends, obviously, everyone is issued a specific range, and in OLAND, if you're at a certain level, you're able to interact and visit other OLANDs at that level. In a similar way, the O friends themselves will have dedicated chat rooms, dedicated resources for other O friends at that level as well. So you'll see 128s, 32s, 64s, etc.
So if you zoom back to looking at this image, we posted an image of some of it's a promo piece or header piece for some of the conversation we're having here, but we posted this image or piece of it before. Your O friend has all these layers. These layers are woven deeply into the leadership of the community. It's why it's such a big deal when you find one or if you have one, because they are it's almost like it's like owning a piece of the Xbox controller and the Xbox and the TV in both influence and intricacy. Like all of the levels is a demonstration of, okay, the first thing that someone asks is if you're at that level, you would have land in that area. So if you're visiting lands at another level, you would have that unless you have an O friend. So it lets you have this interesting dynamic of not policing, but leadership presence. So like a representative presence. And if you go to Overline, so we aren't into the lore of Overline. I don't know that we'll ever release a full corpus of the strategy behind Overline, but in a nutshell, it's a network state. It's a proto network state, and then it's a proposed way to deploy a financial system, communication system, and citizenship framework using decentralized technologies. In that network state, one would have representative voices. We see the O friends as representative voices of the levels that they connect with, and so you end up having this almost congressional perspective. You already see representative voices coming in the form of both rarer O friends or O friends that are picked specifically for their aesthetics. You'll also see representative voices in the form of having an O friend versus not having an O friend. Ownership itself being an indicator of, I am a representative of this community as a member of it. So there's this dynamic that we are actually attempting to enhance, in that you can visit this level, can see what's going on there, can act as a voice in it, and then either report back as a no friend, but you're in two dimensions. you're both a participant at the level your O-Friends sign is, as well as a participant across all O-Friends. So it lets us have a senatorial or representative framework of members across all of OLAND. The other element that I think is important there is in the combinations of land, there is great fear. But if we go back to the lore of the O-Friends and just think of how relevant this is, when you get an upgrade, we don't just say, congratulations, you got an upgrade. I think people would take a lot better care of the planet if they were presented wherever they were as a gift of wherever they were, not as a right. They would treat it better. The O-Friends are what gave all these people their upgrades. The O-Friends are what built it for them. And so every time all these hundreds of thousands of people see some sort of benefit or rare thing, it's because of us as a community, the O-Friends. And so it's creating this psychological both affection and esteem for this class of magical, creatures. The same thesis is not same. Unfortunately, we've learned from the greats in this, and that one of the things that Walt Disney surmised in his design of both Epcot and of Disneyland itself was the establishment of these leadership characters that would then be incorporated in real world events that would bring the magic. And so every time you would watch the original Disney movies or films or even the park itself, the very first thing you would see is this magical mouse bringing the magic to the situation, establishing the magic, and characterizing it into something that's relatable for the event. So we can't sit back and say, oh, it's just the art, or oh, it's just the money, or oh, it's just the royalties. These are designed to act as vehicles for the narrative itself. So they are almost like a book in a picture. It has a lot of depth, and that depth ties into where I guess we're going next. So with going next,
Well,
Craig.
yeah, before we move on, there's obviously so much depth here. There's obviously so much packed into the O Friends. Obviously, the history of cryptography. There's OLAND intricacies. There's items of clothing that are really, really interesting and cool that we haven't even had time to go over all of them. And we're already like 48 minutes in, so I don't think we're gonna go through all the articles of clothing we find interesting. But like the depth and the importance of these O Friends. Obviously, it's important for us, and it's important for I think for you guys to know how much thought and effort was put into these. But there's two sides of that coin of what Patrick's talking about, and we always when we talk about the O Friends, or at least whenever I'm on a call and I'm talking about the O Friends, I think I want to use the word. I try to use the word culture bearers as much as possible when I talk about the O Friends, and it's really important because I think that if you have a profile picture of one of these dogs, it should mean that you're here to help, and you're here to build, and you're here to enhance the experience for the people because it is your dominion. It's something that was built by the O Friends, and as an O Friend, it's your responsibility to do what you can to help make it better. And I think what's so friggin' cool is that all of these O Friends that I'm seeing up on the stage, they're all doing that every day. Like I see posts from Esus digging in. I see folks from Crash, ENSC, Addy, Gregory, Boss, Roy, Monda. Like I see all of these O friend Keith. I see all of these O friends in their profile picture trying to actively make OLAND and the people who are in OLAND make it better and be a beacon of help and a beacon of knowledge and trying to help level up people. And that is so much. I mean, that's all we could ask from the community is something that they invest in with time and effort and the skills that they have to make the community better. And I think that's that double-sided coin, right? Is that there's like we put in a ton of effort on one side to make sure that the O friends are cool and interesting and have depth. But like that means nothing if the community doesn't grab it and ride it for all it's worth and build and add something to it. And I think that you guys have done that in spades. And so that magic that Mickey has, that magic that Disney has, that you feel when you walk into Disneyland, like you feel like a kid, you feel like anything's possible, you feel like magic is real. You are all doing that. You are all actively doing that for the folks in Oland. And so it could be as simple as an answer to a tweet. It could be as simple as a meme. It could be as simple as creating. It could be as not simple as creating a sharded O friend, right? But these are all bits and pieces of the lived experience and the lived lore of the O friends. And so I think that I just wanted to, before we moved on from that, we're really pleased to see all that, and that makes us happy and equally proud to be sporting the O Friends as our profile pictures.
So let's go to something that you guys aren't going to see in most O friends, and the O friends have a hierarchical density to them in that there are different animals and creatures, but there are also different classes, and they each class respects a source of the O friend. And so we talked about, well, the number could tell you something about the O friend, but the house itself and the type of the house that the O friend came from is such an important part of building something strong. And this is what you see in bad revolutions. So things like occupying Wall Street, where anything that was supposed to be mature was supposed to be destroyed. And then you see its short-term nature come out in that decision, where if you build on sand from a biblical reference, your house will fall. We don't want to build on sand. And so every one of the Yo friends have these historical precedents built into them. A very interesting thing among the Yo friends are the primals and the supers. And the primals and the supers are also on a level similar to the dragons and the unicorns. So collectively, there are less than 100 of these in existence to ever be found, total, combined across all of them. The supers, the unicorns, the dragons. It's a rare creature. But just like everything in Oland, there are educational elements to it. The supers are a transformational dog. So they have a magic-like appearance to them, and they present a piece of information that you guys might not know or might not have seen. All of your dogs are standing in front of a very powerful symbol, a symbol that has both caused oppression and violence, but more often than not, it has caused great good and benefit across society. So if you look at a super, and this is fun because this is an example of the token numbers coming in, you can go to a class of all the same numbers. So 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, for example, is one of these types of creatures. They come from a galaxy box, which is a type of house that's an even rarer class of Ophren that we won't get into. The galaxies have a very important story coming up. But the supers, from a power perspective, the supers present behind the frame. So they are meant to be this creature, or they're inferred to be this creature that is older than time itself, older than the game itself. They were there before the game existed, and reference and reveal a narrative component, which is that there's this pyramid, this all-seeing eye, and then a Roman numeral date. And the pyramid originates from the design thesis, not in the pyramids that you might see in, I would say, the darker class of the all-seeing eye, which is the Illuminati reference. But the pyramid is a single-sided, uh, equally-sided pyramid, equal-sided pyramid that follows the Euclidean geometric premise behind both identity verification as well as the balance of the judicial powers first proposed by Benjamin Franklin. So Benjamin Franklin and Thompson were tasked with redesigning the seal of the United States. We aren't trying to say we're United States maxis. What we're trying to say is that we are power to the people maxis. And so the first time that we would see a democratic election process implemented is the birth of the United States. We believe that democracy is the first step to an evolved network state. And so the reference to the pyramid is a reference to the consistent, balanced pyramid that was present in the all seeing eye floating above the pyramid. So most people don't know the pyramid is not originally in the dollar one contiguous unit, but has a golden asset on the top of it. So the Egyptian pyramid originally was capped with these golden cones that separated it from the base. The base was an ascension or educational process, but the all seeing eye was this premise that the gold light, or the light reflected from the sun, would be reflected to all members across society equally, fairly, openly, and transparently. So it's this image of unlimited knowledge to all and fairly. So when Benjamin Franklin first proposed it, it was far more clear, which you guys are, I recommend Googling it. It's a fascinating integration in, I mean, the depth of starting a country. So when you look at like, oh, that's just a dollar bill, or that's just a seal, the thought and the gravity required behind the minds to start a new country is a intellectual burden that must carry beyond the bounds of mortality. So just like I referenced at the start of this call, it has to be such a good comprehensive representation of human thought that even after your passing, its identity, its relevance, and its educational power continue. So the seal of the O Friends with the super and the historical references, we come from the original all-seeing eye, the one that floated above the pyramid, that was equally balanced between the three powers, the same three powers that you see in the US governmental structure, this balance of power to protect the rights of the people, and then present it as a transparent, open light for all. So for those of you who want to see it, this is actually in your image. We decided to keep the layer of the frame there. So if you were to extract this PNG and look at the thing, we all have this source behind our O Friends. But fortunately, we're not succumbing to the Illuminati premise. You have to know about the fact that there's actually this pyramid hidden in the O Friends behind them in the frame itself, and you can draw your inspiration from that. With that, we really have to move on, but we have one more thing to cover. Craig, do you want to talk about our belief thesis behind the different types of offerings, or the offerand houses? Like why put them in a house, and then what can they do with that house, if anything?
Right. So yeah, it's so funny. We before this, I got to tell you, before the space call, we were talking. We're like, okay, we got to make sure we get through this fast, and it's not going to be a long. We're an hour in, and we're just covering the first topic. So we're pumped about talking about this, but we definitely got to move a little quicker. So the Ofrin houses. So I think we drew a lot of inspiration from. I think we've seen successful. We've been around for a while. We've been around since 2000. I think it's the late 17, maybe early 2018.
Which is
We've been
so
in the
offensive to everyone who's in industries that are a long period. I get that. Like, we're a very
right.
early industry,
It's
but for crypto people, we're ancient.
Yeah, this is yeah. 5 years is about the about the industry's entire lifespan. But I think we've seen a lot of successful projects come and go, and seen reasons why they've failed and why they've succeeded. And so when something new comes along that's really interesting and we think a clever way of doing it. Um, we try to take note and we try to adapt and try to learn from it. One of the things that we took inspiration from one of the projects that we really caught our eye was Renga. So I don't know. I'm sure there are some folks of you that maybe either own Renga or have seen Renga, but they were one of the first projects to introduce sort of a black box, which is
Well,
sort of a
keep in mind,
reveal.
caught our eye is a generous statement. Stole our idea is another way to look at it, but okay. Caught our eye as in, hey, nice job there. That's pretty cool to start as a house thing. We should talk less about our protocol.
Right. I think the concept of you probably will go see Ranga. There's multiple collections. There's a black box that you burn, and then you go get it. You will get whatever their character is. I think that we found that really. I mean, obviously, I think the ability to have something remain as unrevealed, but then the option of revealing it, the optionality become something really, really interesting and really, really valuable in the NFT community, right? Because, like, I
But
think,
hold on, to give them the
uh,
full story, just because I mean, like this call will likely only be heard by your friends anyway. And for Renga people, we think the art is very cool. If one were to create, and how this started was, I think it leaked. We were at a dinner of some NFT people, and we were talking about why people aren't preparing their communities for the packaging of a real world product by using the surprise mechanism of what are called gotcha style strategies or gotcha um, games, where you would open the toy, you don't know what's inside, but by priming them using the packaging. So you guys will notice like that certainly looks like a box. And I think what they took as nice, we'll make it a box and they can open the box and that kind of, and obviously it did very well for them, but it was also one of those things where that wasn't our point. Our point was that you could prime the project or the product itself of an upcoming toy or gift by starting their experience in the exact same way, where you have this 3D asset. That's the important part here. Is it's also why you see the animation of the entity and the unknown, which is reverse of how you traditionally see things. We found that PFPs that are animated do very poorly. Statically, you want your identity to be still for some reason. It's just a human thing. But the surprise animation did much better. But we also found that like if you're not able to pick up the box to look at it, to not have this 3D element, if you guys look at a screenshot of just the house without any movement, you'll see what our discovery was. We had to actually go back and make it 3D, make it spin to let this event happen. But I guess the point there is we see a world where you could create toys that mean something from the very beginning, but then in that toy create the exact same experience of opening it, not knowing who's inside, and doing so on the online space. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to launch these dog toys. I do think we should and could and likely will. It's just not a focus at the moment, but we do see these could be really, really fun. Like people love this stuff. If you go down the street, you show a picture of a dog, one of your dogs, to anybody, they're going to say that's cute, like by definition, irregardless of knowing any of the historical facts. Test it on a kid, you'll see what we're talking about. Even as show a kid a mutant ape or a bored ape and a dog, 100% of them will pick the dog. This is they love it. But so I mean, so we see that. But I guess the point with the house is your house is not just the surprise. You can go back into it. So we created our smart contract to let the O friend experience bi-directional transformation. And this is a enormous capability that is going to, you guys will see later why it's relevant. But you don't have an O friend. You have an O friend and his house. And when we enable it back on, you'll see why. If you think about it intellectually, you might want to put something back in its house, just because he's safe there, or he might want to be there because it's cozy. But the psychological benefit of having that choice and having the house significantly add to your ability to increase the weight of this asset. Like at any time, the asset is not an O friend, it is also his house. It also returns to this hidden state, and we think there's an opportunity to let him transform in that um, conversion, but you guys will see how we played out. Sorry to interrupt you there, Craig.
No. Absolutely. That makes it's important to point out. I think the bidirectional thing is really interesting. I don't think anyone's done it yet because don't think we've allowed that to happen yet. But I think it's going to there's going to be plenty of this ties back into what you were saying earlier about the DNA and the future of the O friends and what could be. I think that's going to play a pretty important part of how the O friends are going to evolve in the future. But all that to say, I think that there are a ton of people that are capitalizing on the gotcha stuff and on the Pokemon card style, the pack of Pokemon card style opening events. But I think what would the O friends have in their houses is a lot more built directly into the functionality of the O friend itself, not just a mechanism of creating surprise. So I think that's important. That's important to call out. But really, I think you all definitely had that surprise, had that element of surprise. I know we had people doing unboxing videos or opening events where they would tell their followers that they're going to open these O friends, and that's always really really fun and really really cool to rally around.
All right, so we've covered a lot of the historical side to it. I hope that for those of you guys who are patient enough to the call, that you see the depth of thought. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff hidden in here, even down to the frame incorporating land elements, the number of everything matters in the frame, even the fans on the palm leaves at the borders, the frills. All of these things are mathematically relevant, but added for both narrative density. We think uh, the deeper you make something, the more it's able to be studied, and then the more it's able to be experienced. So these are a order of magnitude more deep than any other NFT, but we don't say that. I mean, you'll notice we don't even push people to friends, and that's relevant because then the people who end up really getting them and understanding what they do is big. So now I want to talk about what their utility function. O-Friends initially allow you to claim O-Cash and a lot of it. They're a method for us to safely and in a regulatorily compliant way allow revenue or royalty or however you want to position the collection of crypto, which varies country to country. People say it's not clear in the United States. No, it's not clear worldwide, especially when you have a worldwide client base. What is clear is giving it away for free gives you a ton of optionality. The best optionality feature we've seen is a ability to share royalties collected in the auctions and in some other stuff coming up. So what we've been doing is backloading all O-Friends with the ability to claim royalties respective to that O-Friend related to fees. The thing is, we want to increase those rewards. So we started looking at how Okash might be more deeply intertwined with them, and there'll be some stuff on that in the future. But there's this relevance of, hey, sometimes individuals have collected a lot of these things. And so we've seen some people take, a sizable position. That should be a sizable reward. So there's all these elements of not fairness, but of forethought. Rewarding forethought and patience is the entire premise of owning land. So a digital asset should do the same thing. The way that will work, and so you guys understand a very critical part of what's about to come out. The Okash mainnet is a Mona Lisa it is a Magna Carta. It's our magnum opus of our interaction of how things work in the crypto space. Everything that we have learned over the years that we have been in here, from investing in Vitalik, while he was still in the Teal Fellowship, to avoiding Roger Ver at all costs. For any of you who knows that, he's the Bitcoin Cash guy, very annoying. All these things all together, and it's like we believe that the release and the reveal and the presentation of the Okash mainnet is our magnum opus. It is everything put together into it. The biggest thing that we found is that information and transparency is critical. And I brought up the pyramid mostly to tie that into our Ocash mainnet launch. Now, I know this isn't an Ocash call. It isn't how we're supposed to present it. But what we are going to reveal is this management panel that will show you a brand new universal basic income. So that is what is about to be revealed in the way that the Ocash system launches. It's going to floor everybody. It's going to be the most shocking way to do something. It's going to be polarizing. It's going to be interesting, and then we're going to have this transaction layer that powers it. So we are going to be revealing this whole thing, but then right there underneath that, and in the way that this income engine works, it's all tied into your reactor in your Oland account. So for what you guys don't know is that your reactor has actually been running this whole time. It's running the moment that you connected your account, and it's issued in your Oland. So each Oland has this reactor premise, but the reactor represents all of your Olands. The reactor, if you guys read the almanac, is also where you do things like crafting potions, combining different upgrades. I mean, as you might imagine, not, I know that some of you are collecting, many flower farms, and you're like, well, wait, now I've got like 8 of these, 20 of these. Like, I'm done with flower farms. Like, well, those are quite useful when you see what the reactor does, why we did this. But the reactor is going to be the issuance mechanism. Now, I go to the O-Friends on this because the O-Friends being this paramount asset, you're going to see it prominently as one of the first big bonuses to having an O-Friend. The O-Friends powers, from an economic standpoint, ties directly to its ability to upgrade your reactor off the gate. I would love to go into the reactor stuff, but I also know that we're cutting really close on time. The one thing I want to address, and then Craig, I'd love to go more into how our airdrop mechanism will work. But um, the O-Friend houses, when you're looking at the O-Friends and you get a house, you can sort by something called the house type. And there's only ever been one Galaxy Vault found. So they are ridiculously rare. I believe I think there's like 8 of them in the entire 10,000 O-Friends that can exist. These are unrevealed to us. We don't even know what they look like, but they're very rare assets. But if you go to the house types, you'll see 6 different house types. There's been one ever found, 35 holographics, Punks, Immortals, Rocket Labs, and then the O-Friend Den itself. So these house types let you see a little bit into who might be inside, but they also have very important narratives tied into them, just like everything else. And I want to focus in on one. We obviously don't have time to cover all of them today, but the one I want to talk about is the Immortal Coffin. The Immortal Coffin, for those of you guys who don't know yet, has a almost spooky appearance to it. It's designed as the iron grates of a Louisiana crypt. Now, this isn't meant to be the scary style of there's a dead thing inside, because obviously there isn't. It's an immortal thing inside. But more relevantly, the immortals are also the only thing that modified the actual frame itself. So these are transformative creatures, and that they change the dimension that you're looking at. And this is relevant because you guys hopefully are starting to realize that the universe that is coming here, took years to create, but it's okay that it's complicated. In fact, it should be expected. The density that goes into starting a network state is the only way to start a network state, to have all these little attributes that might pull in certain people. Certain kinds of people are going to be like, well, I want a dragon, or certain kinds of people will be like, well, I want a unicorn. The same narrative power is seen in stories like The Lord of the Rings or The Chronicles of Narnia, where you might say, well, I want to be this orc warlord, or I want to be this elven mastermind. The same narrative capability is just different perspectives of your intellect. Your immortal is the only time where we actually modify even the face of Hal Finney to replace it, for example, with the Statue of Liberty. And we make it 2 parts in that in that document. I'm actually looking for one of these. They're very rare. Uh, the immortals that you have different types, different modifications. They are both in the future and in the past. So the frame might represent a future portal, which actually is a spaceship reference, and the frame might represent a Greek Parthenon, which is a reference all the way to our historical beginnings. But the beginnings of the written word led to the beginnings of democracy, which obviously leads to interplanetary travel. Now, that's a claim that we can't fully make yet, but it's somewhat safe to assume that Starship might be the first interplanetary vehicle, and then it is logical to assume that democracy itself is the mechanism that was used to create interplanetary species. So these things chain together, and they chain together in the same sequence in the Immortals. They're meant to represent a cross slice of all of the Ophrens across time, but the slice of human thought that is juxtaposition with the artistic side. I'm bringing these up because for the artists in the room, these really are the most artistically relevant pieces because they have all of these changes to them, but customizations to them. The Statue of Liberty is headless in the Ofriend there. And this is a really interesting hat tip to the state of the current democratic condition of the United States. And that head, which in Greek times represents your logos, but in French Revolutionary times, it represents the control of yourself. So, in not to be too gory, but in the French Revolution, you see the decapitation of the head as the definition of the beginnings of the Enlightenment Revolution. What they would do is they would kill these politicians and prison guards and decapitate them. It's grotesque, but I'm giving you the artistic relevance behind the Immortals. It's also why we stored this thesis in the Immortals. But we present that head in a timeless and mathematical infinity symbol in the upper left-hand side where Hal Finney was, protected in the premise of cryptography. So I know that's a big mouthful, but it's meant to show you your Ofriend, what you're holding is a psychological weapon in as much as it is a narrative pleasure. It has this tool element to it that has these stories woven into the deepest parts of what it is. So now with that, we need to cover a little bit more of the Ofriend's impact. Craig, do you want to talk about the speed element of this universal basic income?
Yeah, of course. A quick, maybe a quick aside Easter egg for the Spanish-speaking folks on the community. What an ofrenda is, and basically a shrine for the Dia de los Muertos holiday to celebrate the immortal souls of the loved ones lost. I always thought this was a fun crossover that was pretty cool in the immortal coffins that the O Friends had a ofrenda. I've always thought that was cool, but maybe lost on some folks that don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos. Um, so speed. Patrick was talking about the portal at which this universal basic income credits rewards. You'll see how it works in the future. But what's important to note is that obviously Friends um, owning an Friend or owning multiple Friends. Uh, I mean, there's already been instances where owning Friends and owning multiple Friends has been important, right? Boarding the rocket, boarding multiple Friends, important. Um, Having the ability to create, whether it's swamp boats around multiple Friends or even lore around a racing team, right? Another thing we didn't get to cover, but we'll have to save for another call. But having multiple Friends is important. But I think that what we'd like to, I guess, convey, and what will be very easy to understand from the get-go in this portal, is that essentially you will be accruing and have already accrued a certain number of these credits. The speed at which you will continue to accrue those credits will be directly related to the activity on the OLAND ecosystem. Obviously, the primo number one asset in the OLAND ecosystem is the O friend, and so having one, two, three more O friends actually acts as a multiplier for that credit accrual. So I think it's one of those things where there's going to be. I think Patrick mentioned the flower farms. There's going to be other things too that directly affect the speed at which you're going to accrue these points and the total number of points that you start out with. Um, uh, but while we can talk about things like I'm leaking alpha, but we can talk about things like full sets. We can talk about things like certain magical mystical items. The O friends will remain the. We want to make sure that the people that are getting back to what I was saying earlier, the people that are our culture bearers are valued and understand that they are valued, and that the multiplier of these universal basic credits. We have a name for it, but we're not going to release it today. But these points are going to be accrued at a much faster speed by owning an O friend. So I think that it's really really exciting because a lot of folks have asked, so why is it important that I connect my Twitter? Why is it important that I log in during happy hours? Why is it important that I referred friends? All of those questions are, there's moment in time answers where it's like, yeah, you refer a friend, maybe you get an OLAND. Connect your Twitter, you maybe can play in Tweet to Earn. But what we and what any logical network state must do in order to survive is to incentivize the activities within that network that are valuable. So this is going to be that again, more alpha here, but this is going to be that portal with which the folks who have been grinding, the folks that have been, uh, you know, with us from the early days, will see their efforts rewarded and see this portal be a very very valuable experience for them.
So let's zoom all the way out towards the business side of this call, and we'll close that first section there. And we've got literally like 10 minutes left because we're in the. That's why we do these calls at night, which is funny because technically we work just all the time, but we are in the middle of a workday, and so we have other meetings coming in of the stuff we have to arrange. But so here's something to know. Overline is a bet the farm company, a term that we're borrowing from Elon. We're always going for this moonshot thing, where as soon as that works, we're going to take that down and we're going to double up and bet the farm again. One of the things that we bet the farm on and failed was a $700 million offer to purchase Forbes digital assets. Now, this comes out of nowhere because we don't talk about it, but we put together a financed offer, a formal offer, and you guys can read about this in CoinDesk of our attempt to purchase Forbes and then our discovery of some of the problems with that company. Was only a couple of weeks later, but there's this element of who owns it, and I'd encourage you to take a look at who owns it now, who really owns it. But I'd also encourage you to take a look at when we say things like that, we really are going to take a bet the farm shot at creating this network state. And I want to lay out, kind of take off your reasonability thoughts for a second and replace those reasonability thoughts with the beginnings of any country. So a group of people are going to get on a wooden craft. Many of them will die. They will sail across the water where it takes about 9 months to get there. When they get there, they will create the world's most influential country or superpower for the next 200 years. Now, I don't know that it'll be that way for hundreds of years more. People say it's at the decline. I would say it's at the decline because people believe it. but that's it. Otherwise, it still is the most powerful. But if you said that beginning, story to anybody, you sound like a crazy person. Like, not just that you should survive this 9 months, and it turns out that, the Louisiana Purchase would be the greatest land acquisition that anyone's ever made for all time. They didn't even know what was out there, right? We don't know what's out there for a network state. We do know you should go for it. Any time in history, if you don't go for it, that's the time. That's time. Well, I mean, A, it'll never exist, but B, that's also the time when you lose. Halfway doesn't work with big ideas. You have to go 100%. So the big idea here, taking off your rationality glasses for a moment, is to deploy democracy in your pocket via these O routers. So we send O routers all over the world that let you communicate and chat and finance and talk. And then you use a visualized universe, which is a metaverse, to make that network state far more real to the individuals who are in it. So when you hold up your phone, you're able to see the properties that you own. But taking that one step farther, and that's the business part of this conversation, we created a DAO in Wyoming which supports the legal creation of DAOs. This is the Overline DAO. And the Feast event, which is the next event for the O Friends, and we are telling you this because we need to organize the Feast event after. So we are going to celebrate the return of the rocket with a feast of on-chain O treats. But it's just funny to say, because it's like these on-chain O treats are going to be, given to each of your dogs, and they represent ownership in this DAO, which is acknowledged as ownership in the DAO by the state of Wyoming, backed up by the federal law that supports that state. That doesn't actually mean much, which is interesting when I say that. The fact that Congress in the United States can't vote to return Bitcoin is an enormous value proposition for Bitcoin, right? It can't vote to make Bitcoin print more. It can't do that. In the OLAN universe, and why this is not a grandiose idea, it isn't even a logical idea. Whether or not Overline is the next form of a network state or the logical evolution of democracy is irrelevant. The logical evolution of democracy will be independent power of voting increasing in some form. What this does is allow you to look at things like, well, we'll go ahead and blacklist, any payments who try to come out of Russia. And I'm not saying that we're evading Russian sanctions. I'm saying that we couldn't prevent them or support them either way. In the O router universe, there's no mechanism that can stop cryptography or the transfer of coins or the movement of information through the ecosystem, which if you are against the open freedom movement of communication, then you are the antithesis to democracy and the reverse, and arguably the death of democracy is a republic and then ultimately a dictatorship. It's not like republics and open voting systems haven't been tried in the past. They just have a half-life. They can't pass the bounds of mortality. Same reason that you see Rome collapse in a couple hundred years. You have this amazing takeoff period, but the fall of the republic is the disillusionment of the systems that no longer pass mortality. Fortunately for all of us, or unfortunately, Bitcoin won't change. In 10 years, 50 years, it's still the same crypto key that if you wanted to get that Bitcoin, you'll need the key to that address, either 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. Same premise if we go back to the business that's about to take place. So the next event is the feast. At the feast, everyone will get on-chain O treats that are tied to a real-world Wyoming DAO. Our plan with that DAO, and we're working out how this will work with you guys, is to actually allow you to donate, and we're not like don't donate thousands, we're just donate a couple bucks to the DAO, and the DAO will then take that and donate to local public dog shelters in the United States. The premise there is not that we're donating to dog shelters or not that we're trying to give away money or anything like that. It is actually to begin very quietly, very subtly, in a way that would be ignored by the people who want to control you, to allow a network state to support a real world state. Now, this is the critical part of this call. If you want to remember one thing beyond the fact that O friends are cool, it's this. If a network state can in any way become 51% of the support of a real world state, that real world state is no longer in power. If a network state, for example, is the reason that fire engines show up at your house, or they are the public works behind an energy project or a dam, that network state is the state in that area. Whether or not those people acknowledge it is almost irrelevant. If the country is financed by a foreign power, they call it a parent country. That's the term in the financing industry. You have these parent countries that actually pull the strings. If you look at this, this is a big part of how Venezuela has both suffered but also, made somewhat, interesting decisions. In that Venezuela is suffering as a member of an overfinanced child state. It has succumbed to it. We could, if we slowly but surely start to support public infrastructure, for example, refinance a large dam where the overlying network might support the financing and ownership of that dam distributed to our members of the DAO and influence financially the infrastructure of that country. So if we look at like what is the way to launch a network state, the childish way is the Occupy Wall Street way, which is annoying and short term. Things like violence, it's dumb. You can't invade another country and then say that it's yours. We're all on the same rock. It's the same planet hurling through space. What you can do is quietly finance it. Financing is the new form of Gandhian economics. It is the peaceful way to support the infrastructure abroad. Unfortunately, it is how the United States spread democratic values, but the consequence ultimately led to an overinflationary mechanism that now many countries, as you're seeing, are leaving. I know this is intense. It might not be what you guys expected at the end of a fun call about a bunch of magical dogs. But I am showing you that these magical dogs have Walt Disneyan, firepower in them, and they have a future in what they are supposed to do and a precedent that I would want you all to start to take control of, which is very interesting. It's interesting in that you almost already have control of it. Many of you already have influence, or you're starting projects, or you have a lot of the O friends, or you have notable O friends, or you're often on Twitter calls or whatever it might be. You already have what you would consider backroom power in a senator's room over the influence of what the O friends do and how they impact things. But I'd also ask you to take this conversation as the kindling for your own conversations and thoughts, because we are going to go for the farm. We're betting the farm on this. We're about to deploy the O routers. We're about to deploy O-Cache. And it looks like we're moving the O-Cache. We will at least reveal the panel in the timeline, but we want to make sure this is right. So it's next week, the week after that, for when this panel will be presented to the world. But it's not some new product, it's our new onboarding mechanism. In the same way that there was a time in O-land when you could get land. There's a time in O-land when you can get this new kind of activity mechanism or gas mechanism that isn't O-Cache, but it has proof properties to it. That time is our new multi-million user acquisition strategy. It's how we're going to get the next million users. But it's also how we, as O-Friends, can influence the situation. So like Craig was saying, O-Friends will just earn more of it faster. Your reactor runs faster with each O-Friend powering it. And so that magic and the narrative continues. And so we want the community to feel a little jealous at this feast. This jealousy is not jealousy in the worst way, but in the respectful way of like, wow, it's going to be cool if I could own an O-Friend, because I'm going to be a part of some of these things that really push the academic envelope going forward. The last thing to note is that your O-Friends have powers, things like laser eyes, things like licking. These powers are gamified components and influence that each of the creatures have, and they allow you to really pick the things that you like and know that they are a thing. So things like laser eyes in all other projects are simply treated as rarity visually. We think that's a bunch of BS. So your O friend is a living thing. It's designed to do things and to allow you to do things. And we want to keep pushing that limit. And we're really excited that you guys, obviously are in this community. Obviously, we're a part of it as well. But, going forward, we see O friends cross community influence going way up. And so things like the swamp, where you guys, when you see how O play works and the gasless side and all that, it's an easy way for O friends to set their influence. And so I hope you guys take that into account as you're designing your own projects and preparing to be the influential members that you want to be. Craig, do you want to chime off on anything?
No, I think we covered we covered a lot, and yet there's still so much to cover. I mean, things like Patrick, you're saying the magical skills. There's certain aspects like I know there's certain superpowers where things like magical poops or mega zoomies or
Yeah,
the
it's gonna be fun.
supersonic bark. Yeah, it's just like it's all these things that there's so much here. There's so much depth, and obviously, I think we want to make sure that I'll echo Patrick's sentiments, and I won't zing anybody this time, but I'll echo the sentiments of like we thought, hey, all these. NFT projects are really really cool and all these things are really really awesome, but like shouldn't it matter that someone has a rocket pack strapped to the back? Like shouldn't that mean something and not just look cool? And I think that was sort of the philosophy behind a majority of these items from these metadata traits in the O friends is that they do matter, and
Well,
the
and a
more
big
the
thing there is dragons and unicorns have wings. Why would I want my,
right.
their wings?
Right. Exactly. It's like I think lasers, wings, things like there's an item that I think only one person has, if I'm not mistaken, but it's the I think it's called the static soul as a necklace, and
Oh, I
like
can't wait to
that
have one.
that ties
Can't wait.
into
Yeah.
the O router and how the all the technology stuff that we have coming on that side as well, and we, there's just so much packed into each one of these, and I just want the overall theme of I think what I'm trying to reconvey is that they all matter. And I think that we wanted it to be that way. I think when we were building these O Friends for months and months and months, it was how do we make these things that we want to see in the NFT space, we want to see in a profile picture, and in representative of true custodianship of a network. What do we want? What do we think is cool? And having wings and lasers and magical golden poops mean something. I think was really important to us.
So, in closing, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, which I love being able to say that sentence, like in closing, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, which is a document that founded the U.S. thesis, but more importantly, evolved the Magna Carta's precedent that you matter, that you yourself were given inalienable rights. These rights are something that there was a time before putting the ink to paper that person did not exist in history. And what's really interesting with blockchains that people don't realize yet is this is way stronger than paper. And I'm not saying that you're like joining our revolution by oh friend, that's dumb. I mean, this is like let's also like keep it tapered. We're a tiny community that most of the NFT world hasn't even heard of, and the rest of the world hasn't even heard of either. Like we're just kind of starting out. But the moment before you signed the transaction that got a no friend, either you claimed one or you bought one or you found one, whatever that moment was, after that, there's always this proof that you were there at that time and you had it at that block height or at that second. And that moment you entered a new kind of community that never before has been possible in technology, where there's mathematical proof that this change occurred, that we are all O friends the moment you have one. And so I'm really glad that you guys are here with this, but there's this almost peace in the state that the O Friends themselves and your participation, wherever this ends up going, doesn't last a year or 5 years. In 10 years, you'll be able to say, hey, 10 years ago, I had one of those, whether or not you even still own it. But there's this element of O Friends' historical relevance will project its future forward power. Anyway, great to have you guys here. Thanks for joining us. And we'll talk to you at the next space call. I hope to do one this weekend, maybe, if we want to still talk about the meme coin stuff. But otherwise, we will talk to you guys on Tuesday. Have a great week.
See you, everybody.
The MIBs. Here come the MIBs. Nah. The good guys dressed in black. Remember that, just in case we ever face to face and make contact. The title held by me, MIB, means what you think you saw, you did not see. So don't blink, be what was dead is now gone. Black suit with the black Ray-Bans on. Walk in shadow, move in silence, guard against extraterrestrial violence. But yo, we ain't on no government list. We straight don't exist, no names and no fingerprints. Saw something strange, watch your back, cause you never quite know where the MIBs is at. Now, from the deepest to the darkest of night on the horizon, bright light into sight tight, camera zoom on the impending doom. But then like boom, black suits fill the room up with the quickness, talk with the witnesses, hypnotizer, normalizer, vivid memories turn to fantasies. Ain't no MIBs, can I please? Do what we say, that's the way we kick it. You know what I mean? Or see a noisy cricket get wicked on you. We're your first, last, and only line of defense against the worst scum of the universe. So don't fear us, cheer us. If you ever get near us, don't jeer us. We're fearless. MIBs freezing up all the flag. What that stands for? Men in black. And let me see you just bounce it with me, just bounce with me, just bounce it with me. Come on, let me see you just slide with me, just slide with me, just slide with me. Come on, let me see you take a walk with me, just walk it with me, take a walk with me. Come on, let me get that work. Now freeze. Alright, check it. Let me tell you this in closing. I know we might seem imposing, but trust me, if we ever show in your section, believe me, it's for your own protection. Cause we see things that you need not see, and we be places that you need not be. So go with your life, forget the Roswell crap, show love to the black suit, cause that's the men in, that's the men in.